Sherlock Holmes The Awakened is one of many games I've been following for a little while now, and now that it's out, or about to release depending on where you are in the world, I thought it'd be fun to spend a few minutes talking about what it is and hopefully what we can expect from it. Sherlock Holmes The Awakened is a modern remake of the original game of the same name, which developer Frogwares was also responsible for creating. Since then, the studio has created a number of well-received action mystery games, such as The Sinking City. There's no denying that many of the core studio members are big fans of H.P. Lovecraft and his unique approach to mystery and horror. I'll be quite honest here, I've never played the original Sherlock Holmes The Awakened game, and I'm not super knowledgeable about Lovecraft's body of work outside of reading just a few of his stories, but I do understand the general world-building style from a bird's-eye view. Contrasts are always an easy way of setting up narrative drama and tension, and what better contrast could you have than Sherlock Holmes, a man of cold, hard scientific fact, and a big believer in the resiliency of the human mind, going up against seemingly otherworldly beings, religious cults, and visions that could cloud one's perception. Sherlock Holmes The Awakened is said to include 4 distinct open-world locations, within which you'll undergo 8 total cases as part of the main story campaign. Although it seems like you will have a number of optional side quests to do as well, should you choose to engage with them. The process of solving cases based on what the developers have said up to this point sounds fairly similar to other games like LA Noire, where you'll investigate the crime scene, interrogate witnesses and/or suspects, oftentimes using the information you've gained from investigating said crime scene, and ultimately pull all your information together to form the only logical conclusion. The 4 open-world zones will likely be reasonably large, with tons of opportunities for immersion and wandering off the beaten path, in addition to your traditional Victorian-era London, which is, of course, a staple for any authentic Sherlock Holmes-themed game. You'll also have a few more unusual locations as well, including New Orleans, Scotland, and the Louisiana Bayou. Apparently, the game will also feature a sequence in a Swiss psych ward, which will probably be smaller in scope than the 4 aforementioned open-world hubs, as it's not included in that total. It's worth noting that this remake was originally intended to be fully open-world, but due to external reasons such as the fact that Frogwares is a Ukrainian-based studio, and Ukraine, as most of us probably know by now, is still kind of under attack from Russian forces, the developers never had the time nor the resources to commit to a fully open-world formula, so instead they opted for this semi-open-world approach, which honestly works just as well from where I'm standing. I remember when open-world games really first kicked off during the early PS3 days. Not that there weren't any before, but during the PS3's initial years is when the AAA market decided that open-world action games were seemingly the way to make real money. A lot of the PS3 open-world games that got released before that point, like Batman Arkham Asylum, Infamous 2, etc., were really good, but since then most AAA open-world games might as well be called empty-world games. Full of pointless busy work and long boring sequences where you're just walking back and forth between 2 set points. So hearing that The Awakened won't fully be open world, but is going to be a bit more restricted and more linear, actually makes me more enthusiastic about playing it. I'm all for a semi-linear or fully linear story-based games if the story is good, and here, thankfully it does look pretty good. The Awakened includes a lot of mechanics that look really interesting, such as sequences where your visual perception will be altered and you'll have to rely on your other senses. You'll also have to put together clues despite the fact your mind is slowly being driven to the point of madness! Often visually recreating crime scenes in order to figure out what happened in a very Arkham City kind of way. Navigating large open-world spaces over both land and water, with lots of dangers on both fronts, also looks equally promising. I can't promise that The Awakened will deliver on its potential, but Frogwares does have a pretty decent history of delivering, no pun intended, cult classics. I don't think it's going to necessarily reinvent the wheel here, though. One of the game's problems is that it seems to excessively borrow mechanics from other popular AAA games, to the point where only the Sherlock Holmes IP itself makes the game stand out as at least somewhat unique compared to literally anything else on the market. Then again, its genericness will probably be overlooked, as it's not like there's ever a lot of heavy competition when it comes to single-player detective games. The only mechanic that might prove at least somewhat unique, although not completely, is the back-and-forth point-of-view swapping between Sherlock Holmes and John Watson. The developers haven't confirmed the extent to which players will embody Dr. Watson, and given that it was only included as a Kickstarter stretch goal, it's pretty clear that Dr. Watson will not be the primary character, but Sherlock Holmes definitely is still going to be your go-to protagonist. But I'm hoping that Dr. Watson's medical knowledge will provide some additional insights that, when used in combination with Sherlock's analytical approach, will allow the player to overcome certain puzzles that would be excessively difficult or impossible if only playing as Sherlock Holmes. This is a game that narratively is all about these 2 legendary literary heroes in the process of igniting their lifelong friendship. It would be extremely disappointing if this explicit synergy wasn't reflected here in the gameplay as well. While combat definitely isn't the foremost emphasis, there have been a few clips in past trailers showing Sherlock Holmes' formidable physical capabilities. Whether you're fighting cultists, alligators, or other things best left unsaid, hopefully there will be opportunities for stylistic and powerful combos. Nothing kills the immersion faster in a fight sequence than clunky or simplistic mechanics. An important distinction buyers should make here is that Sherlock Holmes The Awakened is a remake of the original, and not a remaster or other form of modern recreation. They're not just rebuilding every little detail on a one-for-one basis, rather think of the recent Resident Evil remakes. For the most part, they keep what was great about the original games, but at the same time, the remakes attempt to update certain other mechanics and design elements in order to appeal to modern audiences without alienating the existing fanbase. It's a difficult tightrope to walk, and not all developers do it well, but Frogwares does seem to be holding their own well enough. Some of the more major changes and additions here include all new graphics and asset models, new animations, new cutscenes, additional investigation, gameplay mechanics, rewriting the story to connect the cases from The Awakened to a younger Sherlock, amplifying the story behind how Watson and Sherlock became so close, key story rewrites, additional side quests, new English voiceover recordings and translations into multiple languages, UI overhaul, change to third-person perspective camera, and additional quality of life features. Basically, it seems like the developers are trying to retroactively improve certain aspects of the story that they didn't really care for the first time around, and implementing certain technological improvements that wouldn't have been possible when the original game was developed. Since I never played the original game, I'm not at all impacted by these possible alterations to the story, but I always get a bit nervous when developers or publishers talk about reimagining existing games, films, etc. However, the only major change listed seems to be de-aging both Sherlock and Watson so as to make this one of their earliest cases ever, around the same time as A Study in Scarlet, so I don't think fans will have too much to fear. The Steam Store product page for the game describes it as a nerve-wracking Lovecraftian adventure rebuilt from the ground up with modern graphics and gameplay. Become Sherlock Holmes as you find yourself at the heart of this terrifying Cthulhu mythos as you investigate a series of mysterious disappearances in Europe and the US. A Lovecraft meets Sherlock Holmes crossover, The Awakened puts you up against the legendary Cthulhu mythos. Investigate a series of mysterious disappearances apparently linked to a dark cult that worships an ancient god. Whatever their plan is, you must put a stop to it, or face unspeakable consequences. For the first time in his life, Sherlock is truly afraid. A man of rationale and reason, he faces a otherworldly entity that defies all logic. And this discovery is as enlightening as it is shattering. The pursuit of the truth pushes Sherlock to the verge of madness, and it's the only story that Watson will never publish. Taking place in 1882, The Awakened lifts the curtain on how Sherlock Holmes and John Watson, mere roommates at the time, became the world-famous crime-solving duo. Key pillars of the game include fighting off encroaching insanity as you pursue answers to questions that have no rational explanation whatsoever, discovering clues that will lead you through the famous Baker Street in London, a haunting psych ward in Switzerland, the perilous Louisiana wetlands, and more. For those daring enough to set forth upon a path plagued with homicidal cults, supernatural weirdness, and psychedelic horrors that may well drive you down the blackened well of madness, Sherlock Holmes The Awakened is now available on Steam. On that note though, that's where I'm going to wrap it up for today. I would like to check out the game at some point, but that'll depend on my availability. I've got a few reviews and first impression videos that have been sitting in production hell for a while now, and I really do have to get a few of them out the door first. That said, what do you think of The Awakened? Have you deduced whether or not it's a game worth picking up? Let me know in the comments down below. If you like what I do, you know the deal. Subscribing would always be pretty nice. I enjoy reviewing stuff and doing casual gaming content, so odds are if you like this video, there are others here that will probably be to your liking as well. Let me know what you think of this weird new Lovecraftian Sherlock Holmes game in the comments down below. This is Warrior Dan signing out. Stay awesome everybody, stay safe, and peace out.